I'm thrilled with today's guest. I'm a big fan. Van Jones, of course, you can see him all over CNN. He's a 3 times New York Times bestseller. He's the Dream Machine CEO. We're going to talk about that. You could also see his content. I highly recommend it. Substack, vanjones.substack.com. How are you, sir?
I'm good, man. It's good to get a chance to talk to you. So much going on. I'm always curious to see how you see it and to share with you how I see it.
Right back at you. What I love about you is you are able to see it from both sides. There are less and less people in journalism today where you can call it you call balls, you call strikes, and I love that.
No, thanks. I mean, I don't know any other way to do it. It's just, sometimes I think people want us to polish a turd and say it's a Hershey's Kiss. Nobody's buying that, so we got to be honest.
You've been such a great friend to the Jews in Israel, and this week it's a tough image as we watch the Bibas family in coffins as the Gazans celebrate around them as they're being let out. 2 little children, a baby and a toddler, and the mother. The corpse in the coffin wasn't even the mother. It was such a horrific, macabre sight, yet it hasn't been picked up dramatically in the media. It's been covered a little bit. That is horrific. And why is it that somehow Israel gets kind of the back of the hand for the media in so many ways?
You know, it's hard to know. I tell you, it's a very strange world where terrorists can kill babies and nobody reacts. I mean, that's about as clear as you can get. Here's a terrorist and here's a baby, and the terrorist kills the baby. And we're just supposed to sort of like yawn and move on to talking about whatever dumb thing Doge did today. But I think, those of us who, want the West to continue to drive forward progress have to recognize this one of the single biggest dangers in the past 100 years. When anti-Jewish hatred takes off, nothing good ever happens after that. You've never heard a leader or a movement be, let's blame the Jews and then do something good. That's not how it works. And so, we've got to be more vigilant than ever.
So why is it when there are atrocities around the world, celebrities are so outspoken, cultural leaders are so outspoken, yet there tends to be, when it comes to Jews and it comes to Israel, a much more deafening silence coming out of our leaders? Why? Try and break that down for me.
Well, look, I mean, I think that for some people, they feel caught because if you comment and you say something positive or sympathetic about Israeli babies getting killed, then the question is, well, have you said anything or said enough about Palestinian babies getting killed? And so then it becomes this, everybody's kind of stuck in this, don't want to offend the Muslim world, don't want to offend the Jewish world, don't want to piss off the Palestinians, don't want to piss off the Arabs, don't want to piss off the Jews. And so people wind up just kind of talking themselves into a circle and never just, saying the obvious stuff, which is, if you are Israeli living on a kibbutz near Gaza, that means one thing for sure. You are a liberal, progressive, kind-hearted person. It would be like a bunch of right-wing terrorists attacking Berkeley. And I mean, that's what it is. And so if liberals can't speak up for peace-loving, people who live on kibbutz being massacred by right-wing terror organizations, there's something way off. But I do understand how people can get themselves, we talk about these babies, what about those babies? And then all of a sudden it becomes an excuse to let the ball drop. Yeah. And you forget there's zero excuses for not speaking up when these type of things happen.
And why is somehow anti-Semitism in this country, we saw it on the college campuses where it was entertained, this hate, from the river to the sea, which is basically the extermination of Israel, hatred of Jews. Somehow it gets put in a little bit of a different pillbox than other kinds of hate. Why is that?
Well, first of all, they mask it and they call it anti-Zionism. So that rather than saying just straight up, we don't like Jews, we say, well, I'm anti-Zionist. They'll say, well, hold on a second. What are you talking about? Do you think that Germans deserve their own country as a people? Do you think that Italians deserve their own country as a people? Do you think that Native American groups in the United States deserve respect and sovereignty? Yes, but not Jews. So you can't fool me. If the only form of national pride and national sovereignty that you oppose is that for Jewish people, then that's anti-Jewish. Now, if you're somebody out here saying, I don't want any countries at all, and I think that Italy should be canceled, I think that Brazil should be canceled, well, then fine. But there's 0.002% of humans ever born that think that. And then people always forget all borders are resolved by politics and war. That's every border. I mean, God didn't, paint lines on the earth. The border between the United States and Mexico is resolved by politics and war. California, where I'm raising my children, Arizona, all that used to be a part of Mexico. There was a political and military conflict, and ultimately there's a new border now. Now, if Mexico says, I don't like this border, and Mexico starts firing rockets every day up into Texas, how long do you think Mexico is going to be anything other than a parking lot? And so, when you have, well, people don't like the border, they don't like this, and don't like that. So Hamas gets to fire rockets into Israel for 10 years. Obama has to spend billions of dollars working with Israel to build the Iron Dome, not an offensive system, but a defensive system to keep so that innocent Israeli school children can walk to school without getting bombed for 10 years. But the Jews are supposed to put up with that. But there's nobody else on planet Earth you would expect to put up with that. So when you hold the Jewish state to a completely different standard, when you hold Jewish people to a completely different standard, when you hold Jewish people's sense of national pride and self-determination to a completely different standard, that's not anti-Zionism. That's anti-Jewish hatred, no matter what you call it. But you've got to be able to walk people through that argument. Instead, what you do, people just, well, hey, it's I just don't like Zionism. And then it's like, well, the other thing I always point out to people, you don't have to support this war or Bibi Netanyahu. But what country has not had a war that you don't like or a president that you don't like? And then you say, well, cancel the whole country. I lived in the United States when we invaded Iraq. I didn't like that war. I didn't like George W. Bush, but I didn't say cancel America. I didn't say America doesn't have a right to exist because I don't like this war and I don't like this president. So when you have a completely different standard, also, there's a border dispute right now between a Muslim population and another population. It's called the India-Pakistan dispute. There's a nuclear standoff between Muslims and India over a border. I don't hear anybody denouncing Hindus. I don't see people marching about Hindus. You care about the Muslim population? The Chinese are crushing the Uyghurs. I don't see campus protests about the Chinese crushing Uyghurs who are Muslims. I don't see protests about Hindus and their conflict with Muslims. I just see one set of protests, and it just happens to be, surprise, surprise, the Jewish conflict with Muslims, which makes me think you don't really love Muslims a whole lot if you aren't talking about Pakistan or the Uyghurs. Makes me think that maybe this is not anti-Zionism or sticking up for Muslims.
Yeah.
Maybe it has something to do with the Jews.
You were really moved by your trip to Auschwitz last year. Talk to me about that. And I was reading what you were writing about, and the numbers are so staggering that 6,000 a day were killed in Auschwitz. Yeah. You wrote it was like 2 9/11s every single
day for 3 for 3 years in just one place. But I think I suffered under a certain delusion. Frankly, probably most Americans do. I understand the Holocaust. Heard about it in school, saw Schindler's List. I get it. You don't get it. I'm going to tell you right now. You don't get it. Most people will not have the opportunity to do this, but if you ever do, you have to go and see it for yourself. Because you cannot get your brain wrapped around a factory built for killing human beings at that scale every day. You can't. You can't. You have to. When you walk into the gas chamber and you look at these concrete walls and you see the fingernail scratches of human beings trying to figure out some way to get out of there. it hits you very different than just the abstract numbers. And you're in there. And you think to yourself, what if you're in there with your mom, with your dad, with your children, and you cannot get out? And by the way, you're just one in a number. They'll drag your body out, and there'll be another one and another. Just today, again, when I came back, I said, look, 3,000 Americans killed 9/11. We went to war. We messed up Afghanistan and Iraq and the whole region trying to avenge 3,000 deaths. That happened in Auschwitz every day before lunch. That's like, so you got to understand, how do you feel about 9/11? If you are a Jewish person or someone who's close to the Jewish community, for them to have gone through that in living memory, this isn't like 10,000 years ago. There are people who are alive today. They're starting to die off now. People alive today who were literally,
yes, it's generation, right?
yeah, who were literally right there. Look, as a black person, people talk about segregation, and they act like it was a million years ago. No, look, my mother, I was born in 1968. I was born in 68. 4 years after the bills were passed. My mother and father were born in 44, in straight up segregation in the South. No colored signs, all that kind of stuff. This wasn't 1,000 years ago. This was literally my mom and my dad. And so when you're talking to people, and saying, hey, well, why are you guys so sensitive? You Jewish people are so sensitive. You can't say. They literally were murdering 6,000 Jewish people a day in the most advanced civilization on earth at that time, Germany, within the living memory of the people you're talking to. So yeah, they might be a bit touchy, guys. This might touch a nerve. You might not want to do Nazi salutes.
That's what was so, to Jewish people, what was so overwhelming about October 7th. It was, wait a second, can this happen again? And it was the world's reaction to it that was the tempered reaction. Just said to Jews all over, you felt a very primal chill. I know I did as a Jew, where it was like, holy shit, can this happen again? And how far have we come in 80 years, or how far have we not come in 80 years?
Look, I think people look at the Jewish community through a different set of eyes than the Jewish community looks at itself. I think the Jewish community looks at itself as very small and very vulnerable. I think if you're Jewish, you say there's 1 billion plus Chinese people in the world. There's 1 billion plus Africans in the world. God bless us. There's 1 billion plus Indians in the world. God bless them. There's 2 billion Muslims. There's 2 billion people on TikTok. And there's only 15 million Jews left in the entire world. Half of them are in Israel. And by the way, half of them are people of color from Tunisia and Ethiopia and Egypt. Mm-hmm. Look just like me. You had to run there to survive. It wasn't just people coming from Europe. It was people coming from the immediate region, hanging on to one place, escaping these ovens, one tiny little scrap of ground on planet Earth for half of the remaining Jews. And there's only 6 million people, 7 million people in Israel. In a world where there's 1 billion plus Africans, and God bless us, there's 1 billion plus Chinese. So I think the Jewish community says we're very small, we're very vulnerable, we barely survive. We have a tiny little country. It's surrounded by some people who are hostile and some people who are not, but you never know. Nobody looks at the Jewish community that way now. If you're not Jewish, you say to yourself, these guys have a very powerful military. They have a very advanced state. They have, Tel Aviv is punches, with Silicon Valley in terms of how smart and how advanced the technology is. They've got a very strong middle class in the United States. And then if you're black, you add to that, well, most Jewish people in the United States have white skin. If I'm black, I've got dark skin. If I had white skin, I imagine maybe my life would be better. I don't know. And so people don't have the empathy. You don't look like David now. You look like Goliath. And when I tell people, you think Israel's like the size of China? Like, what are you guys talking about? Israel is smaller than Phoenix County.
It's the oppressor and oppressed. They must be the oppressor. They must be the oppressor.
Here's the thing. I know the Jewish community in particular has gotten very alarmed about this oppressor-oppressed binary. I do see it differently. What's happening in the Middle East is a bunch of indigenous people fighting with each other. So let's just take that off the table. But there are power differentials in the world. There are status differences in the world. There are rank differences in the world. There are oppressive situations and oppressive. That you can't deny that. But what do you do about it? Do you take the Dr. King approach? Do you take the Nelson Mandela approach, where you say, "I want to free the oppressed and the oppressor, so we can all live together in peace and harmony"? Do I say I want to free the jailed and the jailer, so that we can live together in harmony? Do you take that path, so that no matter what the differences are, you're still fighting for everybody's humanity, you're fighting for everybody's dignity, you're sticking up for the best in everyone and knowing we'll all be better together? Or do you say, well, they have too much, we have too little, we're gonna dehuman in the name of rehumanizing ourselves, we're gonna dehumanize the people that we feel are our enemy. And rather than fighting for everyone's dignity, we're going to now start to dehumanize and put down other people. So now, every white person is a racist. Every man is toxic. Every Jew is a colonizer. Every billionaire is evil. We're going to now in the name of fighting intolerance, we're going to be so intolerant ourselves that we become intolerable, which is what's happened to the left in the United States. So I don't mind being honest and frank about some of the differences of advantage, disadvantage, privilege, success. What I mind is when you take those differences and you use them to dehumanize the people who you think have a leg up, and miss the opportunity to bring your own humanity and everyone else's to a different level. The left has gotten so far away from Dr. King. It's gotten so far away from Nelson Mandela. It's gotten so far away from Ella Jo Baker, Fannie Hamer, etc., that sometimes it's hard for me to be a part of it because I don't believe in that shit. If Dr. King could be looking at actual sheriffs who were killing people and putting dogs on people and still fight to see their humanity and try to bring people together, I think I can probably be a little bit nicer on Twitter than most of these people. Like, I mean, what is going on here? So, I think that there's a moral challenge that people in the Jewish community have to rise to recognize that this 50-year holiday from history, in some ways, the Jewish community has had, where it has been able to build a strong middle class here and a strong state there, has shifted people's understanding of Jewish vulnerability. And it takes a while to explain to people that this group is not as strong as it looks. And so there's got to be some patience there. You can't just call everybody anti-Jewish who doesn't get that. We didn't spend a lot of time explaining this to people until about a year ago. And at the same time, I think people gotta realize that we are not far enough from literally industrialized mass murder of the Jewish community to be this cavalier about the fears the Jewish community has today.
Let's shift gears to domestic. We're about 34 days into Trump 2.0. Let's start with the good. What's he done that you're happy about? Because I'm trying to kind of reframe my whole, it's hard, but let's start out with, okay, here's what Trump's done that's pleasantly surprised me or not surprised me, and he said he was going to do this, and I'm happy about it.
Well, look, he put Miss Alice Johnson, the formerly incarcerated black woman who he freed working with Kim Kardashian. He just put her in charge of pardons. That's huge. Somebody who's actually been incarcerated, been in the federal system, understands how the Department of Justice screws over people who should be coming home. Some people shouldn't come home, but a lot of people should come home, and they get screwed by the pardon office. She's going to fix that. That's, if somebody's worked on criminal justice, as you know, for 30 years, having someone who's a formerly incarcerated person in charge of going through all these pardons and making sure that people get a fair shot, I think that's a very good thing. Don't ask me for number two.
Okay. Well, it's interesting you bring up as far as your work in terms of prison reform. This is a quote from you. You said, and by the way, Trump's heart can be touched. He has been moved many times to help downtrodden individuals, whether in his employ in federal prisons. First step back. So don't assume the moral appeals can never work with Trump. In the right form and circumstances, they can and do.
That was my experience doing Trump 1.0 for sure. It was a different Trump. It was a different movement in those days. It was a smaller movement around Donald Trump, and I think people could point out, if you say you're for the forgotten man, there's nobody more forgotten than somebody in prison. What can you do there? And I did see him. And by the way, um, Trump did stuff I've never seen an American president do. In Trump 1.0, he brought in uh, formerly incarcerated people to the White House in large numbers. Um, Brought them up on stage with him, gave them the microphone, let them say whatever they wanted to say at press conferences. Things that I don't. I mean, I don't remember Biden or Obama or Clinton doing anything remotely like that. Um, and there were some very touching moments that I had in the Trump 1.0 White House, going in there to fight for people who were in prison, and we did get 40,000 people out of federal prison under the First Step Act. The vast majority of them never got in trouble again. So the most successful prison reform in the history of prisons was the First Step Act, signed by Donald Trump. He handed me the pen in the Oval Office, and 40,000 people came home, and most of them didn't get in trouble. So I've seen that, but this is a different thing. Trump 2.0 is a different thing, and I'm much more concerned about it.
Yeah, we don't have there are no guardrails right now. I mean, I'm so worried. I don't know what stop. The press took a lot of the liberal press or the left wing press or the mainstream press that, oh my God, this boy who cries wolf and our democracy is in trouble. And certainly in the first 35 days, there's nothing that would make it seem that anybody was crying wolf.
And do you think we have a left that cried wolf? We have a left that cried wolf. In Trump 1.0, every tweet was the end of the republic. Everything that he said, and they had this idea, well, we're not going to normalize him. We're not going to normalize him. Well, that's stupid. He's the president of the United States. And you're a newscaster. So what are you going to do? You need to, everything can't be a 5-alarm fire. Well, you do that for 10 years. Now I think we are at a 5-alarm fire. And I would be rabidly opposed to even my beloved Barack Obama doing this stuff. We have a system. It's not perfect, but it's designed to work a particular way so that you don't have a king. You don't have somebody who just has unchecked power. And he's just, he's grabbing authorities that are not allowed. They're just not allowed in our system. And, like I said, nobody loves Barack Obama more than me, but if he were president, I would be opposed. This is not how our system is supposed to work. And, we just said we're so far from tyranny and dictatorship in our country that we don't understand the dangers now. You're pulling down guardrails, and, you could be in a world very quickly where you got to pay a bribe, to not have your company attacked, where we got people going to jail in large numbers who should not be going to jail, mainly because they are political opponents of the president. You've never seen that in your lifetime in the United States. You don't understand what that is. You talk to people in other countries, and they'll tell you what it is. And we're very close to that now.
What's so troubling is I'll talk to people who voted for Trump, good people, smart people, and you'll start to talk about things, this dangerous democracy, and they kind of eyes glaze over. And what happens is, I think if people are getting what they want, what their life, okay, basically shut the border down, or if he's doing good for Israel, or whatever your perception is that he's filling your need, you either won't engage or you look the other way, and neither one is okay.
Well, also, the reason why I think people should be very concerned is he has both chambers of Congress. So he could just go to Congress and pass these things as laws. That's the normal way to do it. He's not doing that. He's taking powers away from a Republican Congress that the Constitution says they're supposed to have, and breaking laws that were bipartisan laws. This is not, and so you can like the outcome, but you still in America have to also respect the constitutional process. That's the difference between a dictatorship.
That's what I'm finding, that people are not in tune to that. That doesn't seem to be a panic button for people. They're not seeing it. They're not feeling it. And I'll talk to people, and as I said, I get blank stares.
Well, I tell you what, ask them this. In 4 years when we have President AOC, And President AOC is doing these things with no checks, no balances, no oversight, putting in all her people, bringing in her, laptops to like download all your information. And then, how are you going to feel about that? Because, you can have a new president, but that doesn't mean you have a new anti-constitutional system. And so the thing is, tomorrow always comes, and there could be a President AOC, and she could say, "Great, well, thank you very much. I am now firing everybody who's not XYZ PDQ. I'm taking all your data. I'm giving it to my corporate friends." I don't think people like it at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about you. You've been so outspoken about the Black community, the Jewish community working together, the similarities, the issues, the problems. You've been really kind of front and center in that. Let's talk about that a bit.
Well, for 100 years, a chunk of the Jewish community and a chunk of the Black community collaborated to deepen and to defend democracy. Now, it gets overstated. The Black Jewish Alliance, every Black person and every Jewish person were all holding hands and all singing. That never happened. You've always had some Black people that didn't like Jewish people. You always had some Jewish people, frankly, didn't like Black people. That's not the point. The point is that there is a cultural DNA in the Jewish community called repair the world. It's a cultural DNA. And there's a cultural DNA in the Black community that's called justice for all. And everybody doesn't live up to that in both communities, but the people who do, the people who really believe in repairing the world in the Jewish community, the people who really believe in justice for all, we've always come together. Always, always. In 1909, it was the Black Jewish Alliance that created the NAACP. 1910, it was a Black Jewish Alliance that created the Urban League. And you go every decade through the last century, disproportionately, Black and Jewish activists working together on civil rights, on women's rights, on labor, on art, on theater, on music. I mean, it's an incredible track record. And if you just fast forward from 1909 to 2009, who's walking in the White House? Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Rahm Emanuel, David Axelrod. It's even even in 100 years later, it's Blacks and Jews going in there into the White House to try to make America better. And so that alliance has never been perfect. It's never been easy. There's always been bullshit. There's always been conflict. But at the end of the day, the best in our communities have always come together, and the world has benefited. Not just Blacks, not just Jews. The world has benefited. In fact, if you like American democracy, thank a Black and thank a Jew. You're welcome. Disproportionately co-authored
Yes.
what you now call American democracy. And so if you tear, the smartest thing to do then, tear those groups apart. Never have them work together again. And then you can have the whole century to yourself, because the main defenders of democracy are now estranged. Now the white nationalists have an easier shot. The extreme terrorists have an easier shot. Crazy anarchist groups with no good ideas about anything have an easier shot, because you just pulled apart the two pillars of the whole thing. And so I'm not stupid enough to, I mean, look, we have our differences. We've always had differences. We haven't agreed on everything for 100 years. But on the main stuff, no hate against anybody. No hostage taking and the Black Panther Party didn't take hostages. Nelson Mandela didn't rape anybody. There's no tradition of Black freedom fighting movements of despicable, barbaric stuff like this. No hate crimes, no hostages, no support for groups like Hamas that like butcher children. I mean, a secure homeland for the Jewish people and for all people. This is simple. So when you start pulling us away from each other, where even the things that we don't have to agree on who the prime minister is or this war or that war. That's never been, but there are basic principles of democracy, dignity, respect, human rights that was always brought us back to the table. Now, the Black community is an anti-war community in our bones. We just are. Dr. King And Muhammad Ali didn't support the Vietnam War. With Iraq, 80% of white folks supported W going into Iraq. 80% of black people did not. So black people are not going to be enthusiastic about a war like this, and you shouldn't expect black people to be enthusiastic. No, I can make the case, you can make the case, but that's just not. But that shouldn't be the beginning and the end of our relationship. Hostages we can agree on, hate crimes we can agree on, homeland we can agree on, Hamas is trouble we can agree on. There's a lot that we can't agree on, but if you're not talking, then you fall apart. And then also, when the Jewish community came out so hard, some leaders against DEI, against woke, et cetera, I understand what they were concerned about, but the way some of that stuff was said landed very badly in the black community. And it just seemed like, hey, okay, well, these little DEI programs are not great. And they left out the Jews, but frankly, they didn't help us very much. It's not like these DEI programs like
Yeah.
transform the black community. These are false promises, usually corporate, like, glitter dust that never turned into anything. But now suddenly we're responsible for, like almost the black community started getting almost treated like we were Hamas. And so that shocked a lot of people. Like, well, why are they coming after our little crappy programs? Maybe these aren't the best programs. Are you now saying we don't deserve any help, no support, no recognition that we don't have opportunity? So you had a lot of alarm on the black side. And so what I started seeing was black people moving in a direction that looked more and more anti-Jewish, and Jewish people moving in a direction that looked more and more anti-black. And then, look, guys, we need some marriage counseling. we got to come back to the table.
Yeah.
Most Jewish people want black people to have opportunity. They don't want those programs to put down Israel or leave out Jews, but they want us to have opportunity. Most black people don't want Jewish people to be mistreated or beat up. They may have passion and heart for kids in Gaza, but they don't want the Jews to be wiped out. So can we please get back together, have a reasonable conversation, and then figure out what we want the next 100 years to look like? And so that's what I've been working on.
I just want to go back to something in our last segment. We were talking about the dangers of democracy. You said something that gave me the chills about, how would you feel about people just going right into your laptop computers? Do you think that's where we are right now? What did you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean that this little renegade group around Elon Musk, these young radicals with their laptops under the banner of Doge, who have not been cleared by anyone, who have not been approved by anyone. When I would work in the White House, I had a whole FBI clearance before I could even step on in the front door. And so they're in God mode now. I mean, they're putting their laptops in there, they're jacking in, they're using AI, they're scraping all the data. That's what I mean. Everybody, the insiders are saying, look, these guys are coming in here doing stuff we've never seen anybody do before. That is wrong. It's illegal. And there is a way to root out corruption and fraud and this type of things. But you don't bring a bunch of kids in that nobody's ever heard of with laptops and have them scrape data and stick in AI. So if ALC did that, everybody would be terrified who was on the right or in the middle. And every American should be terrified because we don't know what these kids are going to do. And by the way, in the old-fashioned coup, if you want to use all that crazy language, in the old-fashioned coup, people showed up with guns. These days, you would show up with a laptop because it's all about data.
Let's you and I do a little spit and glue to figure out what we do with the Democratic Party. What would you do right now? Because right now, I've never seen a party as lost. I don't feel they represent me. I don't know what they stand for. I would call myself an independent at this point, and I've been a lifelong Democrat. I've never seen them a party more lost at sea. And I'm the message guy. I'm not sure what I would tell them to do right now. Basically, I'd say at this point, you have to let it play out, because right now I don't know what the arguments. It's got to be 6 months from now, eggs are even, the prices are higher. It's got to be that people are starting to really feel these cuts in the government, things like that. Because right now I don't know what the message is, and I've never been at a loss of words, if you know me.
Look, this is a deeper problem than just a political problem or a policy problem or an economic problem. There's a spiritual problem here where the party became hypocritical. Both parties are hypocritical. The Republican Party is supposed to be the party of Abraham Lincoln, a radical anti-slavery party that believes in individual rights, individual dignity. And they let a bunch of white nationalists get in there, which is the opposite of all that, and nobody does anything about it. So the Republican Party is rife with hypocrisy for that. The Democratic Party is supposed to be the party of the working man, the working woman, FDR, the lunch pail. All of a sudden, you got a bunch of people in the party that if you don't eat kale and do yoga and went to college and listen to NPR, you can't even go to the meetings anymore.
Yeah.
And so elitism is the hypocrisy that our party is guilty of. So we thought, well, fine, we got some elitism, but we thought that their hypocrisy around white nationalism and racism would blow up their party. But turned out the hypocrisy of elitism blew up our party. And so now you have to come back to the table before you have any policies. Do you care about someone who's in economic straits if they are straight, white, and male? Is your ideology in the Democratic Party such that the minute you say straight, white, male, that's the enemy?
Yeah.
And they get no sympathy, no love, no support. They have to bow down and scrape and beg and apologize for everything and call themselves a racist just to even come in the meeting. And when they come in the meeting, they're going to be treated like shit. Well, if that's your party, if you don't have enough love and heart and concern to realize that I'm 56, a 56-year-old straight white guy might have health problems, might be losing his job, might have, kids that have died from, opioids, might be estranged from a lesbian daughter and don't know what to do about it. But if you don't have love for that guy, don't expect him to have love for you. If you don't have a place for that guy, don't expect that guy to have a place for you. There is a basic fundamental return to empathy and decency and love and caring for everybody in the country. And by the way, and if that person wants to be a conservative and vote for Donald Trump, you still have to love him and you still have to respect him and you still have to try to fight for him anyway. How do I know that? That's what Barack Obama did when I was in the White House with him. When we passed health care, it was going to benefit the red states more than the blue states. And he was getting called the N-word every day in the comment sections of the Washington Post. And we continue to fight for the people regardless and speak in terms that were hopefully uniting. Now, the Republicans still beat the shit out of him, but our hands were clean. And you can no longer say that the left's hands are clean when it comes to truly respecting everybody. Our intolerance for people who we saw as intolerant made us intolerable to a lot of people. Until you fix that, nothing else, everything else is going to seem like just tricks to try to buy people up. You can tell when somebody loves you, when somebody respects you, when somebody understands what you're going through, and when somebody is talking down to you and condescending to you and think they're better than you because they went to college. And until that gets hosed out of this party, it's going to be the same thing.
I hear you. Hey, before I let you go, talk to me about Substack. What do I find there if I'm going to learn more about Van Jones?
Well, listen, it's where I go and talk about stuff that, when I'm on CNN, you know how cable TV is. It's boom, 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 boom. Like you're doing news of the day. If you get in a few sentences here, a few sentences there, you feel good about it. But I want to talk about not just news of the day, but news of the decade. Let's talk about stuff that's really going to impact people for a long period of time. Let's go a little bit deeper. Let's spend a little bit more time with it. And I don't post every day. So when I post, it's really, a time that I feel I must speak on something that's important. So I post a couple times a week, and sometimes it's short, sometimes it's long. But there's no talking points, buddy. It's straight from here.
Van, I love talking to you. I know how busy you are. I really appreciate you taking time, man.
Very good. Thank you, buddy. Peace.
Everybody, thanks for watching. If you like it, hit that subscribe button. And we love having you here watching On Brand. And just don't miss any future episodes. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We'll see you next time.